Hi, my name is Ryan Woodkowski. I'm a licensed therapist, counselor, and I wanted to share this video with whoever is watching this because I think this particular video is a great explanation of a recovery process. So by recovery, I mean people who are, on the more extreme end, recovering from drug addiction or other mental health issues, and then on the other side is people who, and by the way, no more difficult for anyone either way. On the other end, people who just want to make big life changes, want to change their life in any way, right? And I thought this interview with Shia Labeouf, I hope I'm saying his name right, is it's a really good example via this interview of what that process looks like, right? And really, it's really nuanced ways in which people can go through this process and how often I would say that it rarely, as you're sitting back thinking to yourself or have a feeling like I need to change something about my life, about my situation, I think rarely does what we think that process looks like, actually play out in real life, right? It's often, like I said, so nuanced and so just different, and the perspectives are so almost novel and new as we're actually going through it, that ends up looking nothing like we had imagined for the most part. So anyway, I'm going to show you this interview. I thought there's a few parts of the interview I really, really liked. It's like a 2-hour long interview. So I just found this 11-minute clip. And if you guys like it, maybe I'll go back and do some other segments of this interview. But I'm just going to state my opinions. I'm going to maybe make note of some things that I find interesting, or something that I think might help you put some context to what he's saying. Or just maybe ask some questions to help you sort of think about your own situation, whatever that might be. So again, all my opinions. If you guys have other thoughts or feelings about this, feel free to make a comment, and then I'd love to hear it. So I'm going to get this started, and I'll kind of pause where I find it appropriate. Again, I've seen this before, but I'm just going to kind of play it by ear as we go forward here.
There's not a whole lot of dudes that are taking accountability. I fucked up bad, like crash and burn type shit. Hurt a lot of people. And I'm fully aware of that. And I'm going to owe for the rest of my life.
So that first part is, I think, the most important, and maybe partly the most difficult, which is an acknowledgement that I have the capability of hurting other people, right? At some point in my life, I have been a person who has caused harm to someone I love or someone I care about or anyone at all. Oftentimes, especially as you get like really deep into personality disorders, which in my humble opinion is more to do with response to trauma than anything else. That's a different video though. But some people have a really, really difficult time in the acknowledgement that they have done something that has harmed another person. That's such a hard reality to come to, truth to come to. Some people like have this feeling like they no longer exist. They will die. They will melt into the ground, whatever metaphor you have, if they admit that they have done something to harm another person. So that's a really, really important step. And he's sort of explaining, how he has gone through that.
No love in my life. I had no purpose in my life. My whole purpose, as you know, was just craft. It was just, I'm going to be good at this thing, and that's all that I have. The only thing I care about in life is being a good actor. And that's such a vapid, shallow existence. And 3 emotions.
So I think we can, he's an actor, but I feel like this goes for really anyone. I mean, when our identity becomes our craft or our job, whether it's me as a therapist, or whether it's an accountant, or whether it's a business person, or whether it's a doctor, or someone who is working at McDonald's or working in retail and wants to be doing better and making more money. Either way, if you identify your entire being as what you do for a living, right, you actually forget about who you are. Right, and you stop recognizing there's all these other parts. And then partly that's a cultural message. That's a message based on your personal history, but that can happen a lot. And there's reasons for that. Like I will look at that, making our job, who we are, as a solution to something. Meaning I do this because it feels, at least in the short term, good. Right? It feels like I can count on this thing. right? When the rest of life is so complicated and chaotic. But I'll back it up for a second and we can keep going.
Shallow existence, and three emotions that I toggled between, which was I would feel anxiety, depression, and excitement. And I thought excitement was joy, and I thought lack of depression was serenity,
peace. Yeah.
And I had no spiritual life.
I think it's good to clarify a couple of things here, or just to, again, add perspective to it. Anxiety, fear, depression, I think those are the three you said. Depression, I think what that is in the word itself, depressed, to push down. Sometimes consciously, mostly not, right? When there's no emotional movement, happiness, sadness, joy, just there's nothing happening. We start to feel that sense of depression, which is, the building's on fire and I'm at the window. What the heck do I do? There's really nothing, it hurts, but there's nowhere to move, right? Either way, it feels like it's going to hurt. And then, he mentioned fear and anxiety.
I was bankrupt spiritually. I thought my whole spirituality was this craft. Because other than smoking weed and drinking, the only spiritual experience I ever felt was on set. That's the only time my perspective would shift and change. And it's the only time I ever felt useful. My propulsion system was fucked. Mm-hmm. My motivations behind the way I was living my life was wrong. Mm-hmm. I had to get a new propulsion system. I wasn't looking at life.
How often do we all have to find something along the way that gives us meaning, right? That gives us a momentary sense of okayness, and it could be work, could be drugs and alcohol, it could be gambling, could be relationships, could be, shopping online, it could be a number of different things, right? And we can pathologize that if we want to, but, ultimately what he's saying is acting was the only time in which I could actually feel okay. Like I fit in somewhere, like I was accepted.
How can I be useful to other people? Mm-hmm. I wasn't looking to be of service to nobody. I had been therapized my whole life that it felt like, you want me to focus on the problem? Well, how am I gonna hack this focusing on the problem thing? And how am I gonna find my way back to this fucking hustle so I can get back to my ego? Because really all I cared about was my ego. I didn't give a fuck about getting well. Yeah. It was all about get well for you, get well for the camera. I've experienced ego death, but you gotta let go. You got to let go in full. And I want to get in my car and I drive up to Utah. And I'm in Utah for 3 months. And while I'm in Utah, they take my cell phone from me. And if they didn't take my cell phone from me, I was never going to be able to deal with what I needed to deal with. I had never known how to pray because I could never cultivate silence.
A really great point. And he's talking about the phone, right? Which is just, this dopamine hit all the time. It's this constant distraction. Distraction from what? Distraction from what's happening in our lives, distraction from awareness, distraction from living an examined life, right? And so that looks like, again, a lot of different things for a lot of different people, right? But what happens when we quiet down for a second? There's a reason that when people who have chronic pain, and I've had chronic pain myself, but people always say it gets worse at night. It gets worse in the evening or first thing in the morning. It's the worst. And part of that is because at nighttime, the stimulus of the world slows down, right? There's less and less things for us to be distracted by. And when you're sleeping, there is all of a sudden everything boils down to this pain. And it's all I can feel, right? Or this discomfort, it's all I can feel. And that's, again, one of the very intuitive reasons our bodies and our minds are like, we don't want to have any silence. Because in the short term, this may be uncomfortable. So I'm curious about how that might show up in your life for you.
In my life, every unforgiving minute was full of some fucking scroll or some more like ego feed, constant, nonstop rotation of this ego thing and that ego thing and just constant fulfillment of like my own personal desires. And they took my phone from me. And just for that reason alone, I would urge anybody to go this route if you're in a situation like mine, just to get the fucking phone out of your pocket. And what that gave me was time to like really assess what had been my.
I mean, if I could prescribe one thing, right? As long as we had, we were in a relatively safe space for ourselves, and things aren't too bad. But I would say, take your phone out of your pocket, turn it off, leave it behind for a day, for an hour. I know it's really, really difficult. It's not always practical, but with some intention to cultivate that space with no screen in front of you.
Operating systems. what had been like the motivational force in my life, which was always me. It was always ego. When do you become a man? When you get a driver's license? Like, what do we do? You're 16, we give you a driver's license. Okay, well, like, you get a job? Like, when do you become a man?
So the question, when do you become a man, is really, really important. But he also talks about the ego and doing everything for himself, right? And if you think about someone who has a history of some sort of trauma, right? Remember, trauma is what happens to you. It's what happens inside of you as a result of what happens to you. And sometimes it's also the good things that human beings need that just didn't happen because, life is stressful for parents or whatever else, right? So that ego, though, is a child only sees the world, right, through the lens of, he's very egotistical. Children are very egotistical. It's all about them. Literally, they only understand what happens in the world is happening, and the cause of that is me, right? And there's not a lot of nuance in exploring cognitively or understanding emotionally. That's just what it is. So if that's what you're adapted to, is understanding the world, possibly always being concerned with oneself and their ego, whereas on the outside it looks like this guy's just a jerk or an asshole, right? To this person, that's just what they know how to do, right? That's literally how they see the world. And that viewpoint can hurt people. And it does hurt people in real life. So he's articulating this very, very well in a way that's, very, very understood. And when do you become a man? If you're a man watching this, he's going to explain it. But I would say that in our culture today, there is, at least in the Western culture, there's a piece missing for guys, right? There's that jump from being a boy to being a man. Back in the day, there was ceremonies, there was rituals, right? There was a moment where there was an immense amount of responsibility placed on, young boys or men, and which helped them make that transition, right? And today, that's really missing. Maybe you can join the military. Maybe you're part of a high-level sports team, or high school or college, or even the pros, whatever. But the majority of men don't have any ritual ceremony process to formally say you're a boy and then you're a man. Like he says, is it when you turn 18, when you can rent a car? Right? There's really no milestone, and it leaves a lot of men feeling kind of, there's this just very gray area, right, in which you've heard like Peter Pan syndrome. It's the boy who never wanted to grow up. It's not that they don't want to grow up. It's that there's literally no guidance or perspective or context to what growing up is. So interested to hear your thoughts about that.
Become a man when you become responsible for other people. And part of that is taking accountability. Yeah. And so I am very new to this being a man thing. And I'm still not there. And I'm on a path. But I didn't have I grew up in a culture that told me going to war made you a man. Going to prison and coming back makes you a man. Making $1 million makes you a man, and it doesn't. And you don't know it.
There's lots of misguided ways in which men and boys are taught they become men. Whether it's what he mentioned, whether it's sleeping with as many women as possible, whether it's doing drugs, whether it's, getting drunk and, I don't know, acting crazy, right? Trying to be the toughest guy, getting in fights. It's a big question mark, but he's making a great point.
Things and realize, damn, I'm still a little boy. Or been around people who've been there a bunch of times. Also, my definition of warrior has changed.
Me too.
I didn't really know what that meant. And really, it's about bringing others back. And that's my whole fucking mission, dog, really. Is just to dudes who've been where I've been or something similar, just know it gets better. It does. It don't make no sense. It doesn't make no sense. It's irrational. It doesn't make any sense on paper that I could have joy in abundance in my life.
So if you're watching this, I imagine that's a real question, is does it get better? And does someone telling you it gets better actually mean anything, or does it seem like a bunch of BS? And the fact is, if you get on the path, and getting the path is difficult, and sometimes it requires help, a friend, a family member, maybe an interview like this that you see from someone, there's all kinds of online figures now, but someone to help you get on the path. And once you're on the path, You always know the path is there. You may jump off of it. You may fast forward 5 years and be like, oh, there's that direction I wanted to go, right? But it does get better. And that's the most important thing, I think, in my work. And I think a lot of times clients want to hear this is the honest truth, which is they want to hear me say it gets better, even if they don't believe it yet. And I feel like a lot of therapists and a lot of people who work in my profession forget to say that sometimes. You're in pain. Hey, listen, it gets better. Just hang in there.
It doesn't make no sense. It's irrational. It doesn't make any sense on paper that I could have joy in abundance in my life, that I could feel any kind of joy in my life after being what I've been. I was a pleasure-seeking, selfish, self-centered, dishonest, inconsiderate, fearful human being. And I was operating on a survival instinct. I wasn't operating as a friend. I didn't actually, all my loves.
To my point earlier, he was acting in survival, sort of in survival mode, right? What can I do to feel okay? What can I do to feel okay right now? And he mentioned all those negative things about him. And listen, I'm sure, from what he's saying, there is some truth to those things. He was selfish, he was dishonest, he was a liar, he was mean, he was whatever. Right? So we're not saying, so my next point is, it's important to realize that. But the way out of not feeling and acting in those sort of childish, egotistical ways, right? The way through that is to develop compassion. And what's the root of compassion? Right? And I got this from Gabor Mate. He was a teacher that I couldn't, he's an amazing teacher. Is the root of the word compassion is to meet where there is pain, or to meet where you suffer. Right? So in other words, if he can, initially you're going to feel bad, you're going to feel shameful, that's fine. Don't get stuck there. But that's useful. You even feel guilt. You may feel terrible about yourself, but that's okay. Like, you have to feel a little bit terrible about yourself. Don't get stuck there. Then start getting curious. Start getting curious about the root of all these things. Right? Not so you can go back and relive it, just so you can be aware. And then that's compassion. Then you start understanding, oh, I was in survival mode. Right? I was acting without tools for myself or other people or the world around me. And then once you have that compassion, then you can start really meeting the pain where it's at and start making some real progress for it.
And friendships were transactional, just you, because we worked together and I experienced great pleasure in that working situation. I didn't actually understand what love was. I didn't know what friendship was. Mm-hmm. I was so competitive. My acting wasn't collaborative. It was competitive.
Do you have many men, and I can relate to this as a young person too, when you ask them about their partners, about someone else, do you love this person? Do you love so-and-so? And the answer, when they're asked that question, is, I don't know. How would I know what that, I don't actually know what that is. I'm not familiar with it. It's not that they've never experienced it before. It's that they're not familiar with what that feeling actually is. Right? So I'm curious if anyone else has ever sort of had that experience of having a difficult time answering that question.
Great pleasure in that working situation. I didn't actually understand what love was. I didn't know what friendship was. Mm-hmm. I was so competitive. My acting wasn't collaborative. It was competitive. It was a sport. Mm-hmm. And my life was this way. Mm-hmm. And this is what created the insecurity and the jealousy that put hands on this woman. Mm-hmm. The man that was involved in that relationship was constantly comparing himself to other people. Mm-hmm. And I was a dishonest person in that I was wearing this mask. I've gotten cold sores my whole life. Got them from my mother. I get 2 cold sores a year when I'm stressed out or I'm sick. I never told any of my sexual partners about getting cold sores. Never. And that's something, when you talk about like, how do you talk to these people who you done f***ed over? Like, there's certain shit you can't clean up. Yeah. You can't make amends for permanent damage like that. And so my daughter now has become this opportunity for me, and every woman in my purview has become an opportunity for me to be like a stand-up dude. I used to open doors for women. I used to, I was a good dude that way, but it was almost performative. It was almost like, I'll do this good thing so you can think I'm a good dude.
That's the thing. Most guys or men who are abusive, they're not completely evil people. to the people they're with, they seem evil. But to his point, right, there was this very surface level nice person in relationships in which it was safe, in which there wasn't intimacy, in relationships in which no one could fully see his vulnerabilities, right? No one could actually see his character flaws, for lack of a better term, right? So in those relationships, he can almost be his ideal self. He can almost be this guy, this funny, charismatic, nice person. Right? That's there, but it's developed it's such a small capacity. And then once the relationship starts to increase, right, then this defensiveness comes in, this shame. And what happens when guys feel shame or defensiveness? To his point, it's often when you start acting out in ways that are not good.
Yeah. And every woman in my purview has become an opportunity for me to be like a stand-up dude. I used to open doors for women. I used to, I was a good dude that way, but it was almost performative. It was almost like, I'll do this good thing so you can think I'm a good dude. But like in my own private life, when the doors were closed, I never told any woman I had cold sores, And so that's deplorable behavior, loneliness and the feeling of being not enough.
I would say that the feeling of not being enough in people who have trauma in their past there's probably a handful of things, beliefs that come up, right? When you really work on getting connected with that belief, and that sense of loneliness and I'm not enough, or loneliness because I'm not worth, the time of others, is the catalyst for a lot of hurt and pain and acting out in certain ways.
That's deplorable behavior, loneliness and the feeling of being not enough and the feeling of constantly comparing yourself to other people. And what that does in a relationship is it makes you controlling and fearful and manipulative. To not tell somebody you get cold sores twice a year is a heinous manipulation, But I never came up with a dude who was...
But it's a manipulation, though, in the sense of, we all manipulate to a point. I mean, you smile at the barista at Starbucks because you want them to smile back at you. But a manipulation in this sense is not okay when it's emotional, right? When it's lying or being dishonest so that another person will see you in a positive light. So they won't see you for the person that you actually feel that you are. And when it comes down to it, they see you as you want to be seen, as a good person, because you don't believe you're a good person. And then we manipulate. And then when they actually call us out, right, when you get called out, what happens? Then you start to get angry, you start to act out.
Hey, this is how you navigate that situation. To not tell somebody you get cold sores twice a year is a heinous manipulation, But I never came up with a dude who was like, hey, this is how you navigate that situation. Nobody hit me to game like, hey, bro, if you're really in love, you can have open conversations about uncomfortable shit.
And that's the important for men of having a father figure in their life, right, is to have a sense of resiliency when you feel guilt or shame and come back from it, right? For a role model, for lack of a better term, to understand what it means to be a boy or a man in a relationship, what that means. It's different for everyone. Right, but there is that attachment can really help with that.
And fearful and manipulative. To not tell somebody you get cold sores twice a year is a heinous manipulation, But I never came up with a dude who was like, hey, this is how you navigate that situation. Nobody hit me to game like, hey, bro, if you're really in love, you can have open conversations about uncomfortable shit and really get to like another kind of connection you don't even know about. My job isn't to feel right. My purpose in life isn't to be happy no more. That's what my purpose used to be, which is such a shitty aim in life.
It is a shitty aim in life to be happy. No, happiness is an emotion. It's a state of being. And you cannot maintain a state of any emotion, whether it's fear or anger. It just does not, it won't stick. So this idea of trying to live a happy life, the expectation is I must always be happy. That if I'm feeling any sort of emotion, sort of, below the surface, that I'm somehow failing or not doing something wrong, right? So I'll leave it at that, right? But we'll let him maybe explain the rest of this then. But more, this idea of being happy, I feel, is so limiting to so many of us.
Purpose in life isn't to be happy no more. That's what my purpose used to be, which is such a shitty aim in life. My aim in life, in totality, my whole purpose for existing in life was to be happy. And that's not my purpose anymore.
And now?
Yeah, my purpose now is to be useful. What I know love to be is selfless, loving action. And I've never known anything as loving or as selflessly active as what this woman did for me in my life. She showed up for me at a time when, I mean, this is the first time I saw her. We had been estranged for like years because of my jealousy. She went and did a movie with another actor, and I thought she was cheating on me. Little boy shit, like nonsense. And we hadn't talked for...
It's not by accident that he says little boy shit, right? He's acting like a little boy, just like we talked about earlier. Exactly what it was. People say words because that's what they mean to say. In that situation, he was spot on.
Years when all this shit hit. And I wound up at this rehab, right, in Utah. And they do something called Family Week. And every week, on a Sunday, everybody who's involved in the program has their family show up on these Skype calls. And everybody will show up in the same room. And your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your wife, your friends, whatever.
Just you and the people? Or
no, it's you, the whole squad of you that are in this group. Like 12 of us in my class.
Everyone's family.
Everyone's family pops up on the screen. And week one, no one shows up. For me, no one. They got the calls. I know they got the calls, but no one showed up. My mother, my father, no one showed up. Manager, friends, no one showed up. Week two, same thing. So I'm sitting in this room, and even the person who's like therapizing me, she's starting to feel like this. She's empathizing with where I'm at. Everybody else in the room, we got a dude who like, you know, this isn't just alcoholics and shit. This is like fucking arsonists and like child predators and all kind of wild people in this group, right? And they got people showing up for them. And I don't have nobody showing up for me. And week two, week three, I'm there 90 days. So I'm there for a clip. And there comes a point where Family Week comes around. I say to my therapist, like, I'm not going to go. You know, like, I don't want to subject myself to this shit. Like, I'm on a path, and, you know, let me just stay here. Like, I don't want to keep reminding myself of how my situation is. And she says, no, I think you should show up this week. And I show up thinking, all right, my mom's going to be on there. You know, my mom will be on. And Mia is on the screen. And, you know, like, you don't deserve that kind of shit. You know what I mean? You don't deserve that kind of shit. Like, I don't deserve that kind of shit. You know, I done put her through years and years of nonsense, bro. Just like, I'm like 2 months into this program. You know, I don't even have nothing going on. I have nothing going on. I'm making this list. She's at the top of the list, but I'm not reaching out to her, nothing like that. Everybody does their shit, and I'm fucking gone, you know?
You know, this reminds me, in his situation, he's talking about, you know, it looks like his ex-partner showing up to support him, and him feeling not worthy, essentially. Like, he said, I don't deserve this. I don't deserve this. And the first thing is that how many people or how many times in your life have you showed up in a relationship? And unless we can acknowledge this core belief, which we do a lot to cover up, this core belief that I don't deserve this, this core belief that I'm not enough, for example. But in this case, I don't deserve this. So imagine having that as part of what you were raised with, and you find another person that you care about a great deal, but inside you think yourself, I don't deserve this, right? It's hard to give love. It's hard to accept love. It's hard to build real intimacy if that's the underlying belief, is I don't deserve this. And then oftentimes what happens is we want desperately to feel deserving, but then act in a way in which we almost guarantee that the other person will come to the conclusion that we don't deserve their love, or that you don't deserve their love. And the other situation this can show up too is, all stemming from the same thing, is in situations of infidelity in intimate relationships, is one partner cheats, or there's some kind of betrayal, and the partner who has been betrayed decides to work it out, and they want to stay, right? And they may even forgive the other person, but the offending party, right, cannot make amends to themselves, right? They don't feel deserving after the pain they see their partner put themselves through, right? So the offended partner is feeling better, wants to work on it, And the person who committed the offense in this case just feels so undeserving, and they cannot forgive themselves for what they've done, right? They're actually not able to be compassionate. They're not able to meet themselves where they're hurt because of shame, because of guilt, whatever it is. And so oftentimes, if those relationships won't work out even if they work out, they won't get to a point in which they're capable of getting, right? Because that's a difficult place to be on both sides. But in this case, it's difficult for the offending partner too. So when he mentions not being, deserving, how that shows up so often.
Going on, I don't even I have nothing going on. I'm making this list. She's at the top of the list, but I'm not reaching out to her or nothing like that. Everybody does their shit and I'm fucking gone, And so they let her go first because I can't even fucking believe. And they all know because I had no family show up for me. And she unmutes and she's like, "Hi, Shia." And it's like, she's prepping a movie. She ain't got no fucking time for this, But she found time and she said, "Hi, Shia." And we just smiled. We had nothing else to say. But she saved my fucking life, dog. Like,
and that's the power of, what having someone be present for us can do. Like you said, they didn't really say anything, but there was a person who saw through all of his acting out and all of his BS, right? And she was able to show up for him and just offer presence. And it sounds like in this situation that actually did change his life. If no one had shown up for him in that way, maybe he gets out of that rehab and he goes back on the same path again. As therapists, I feel like part of what we do is to offer a genuine, authentic presence. But friends can do that, family members can do that, partners can do that. It's an art form, it's a skill and it's an art form, but it's maybe the most powerful thing that we can provide each other as humans. And this is just a great example of that very thing.
For this, but she found time and she said, "Hi, Shia." And we just smiled. We had nothing else to say. But she saved my fucking life, dog. Like, before the kid, before the job, before God, before any religion, before a laugh, was this woman's face. And
I think that there's a thing to be said if you're spiritually minded, if you're religiously minded, that God can be experienced between two people just in presence. I think they're interchangeable terms, presence and God.
No promises made, wasn't no long conversation being had, nothing. Just her presence, the ministry of presence. Sometimes that's all you need to offer a person who's in a situation like that, is like just to be present. And she was present for me at a time when I didn't deserve to have nobody in my life. She's a real one. She's a real one. It's the first time I really understood love because I didn't have nothing to give. And I was sitting there thinking like, well, I don't have nothing. It's not sexy to be with me. Don't you get it? Like, people out here accusing me of like putting makeup on my genitals and like shooting dogs and shit. That's what I'm being accused of. And you're showing up for me like you're gonna be tied to this shit? It didn't make no sense. And love is irrational that way.
And I'll also add this too, is that there's a sense too that if someone has a history of trauma or neglect or whatever it might be, they're in a place where, and again, he sounds like there is some truth to it. He doesn't understand. Well, his belief he has nothing to offer. The truth is that he has a lot to offer. But in that moment, he's in a state of feeling like he has nothing to offer, has no value he can give, right? Because maybe he's still in the past or that's just one of the beliefs he grew up with. And then someone comes along and they say, "No, I love you. I care about you." Right? "I love you. I care about you." And then you have this belief, and depending on what your background is, you may get suspicious. You think to yourself, what does this person want from me? How is this person going to hurt me in the future? And then you're not like thinking about this like word for word. You're not thinking even consciously. But oftentimes there's this emotional reaction. Someone says, "I love you." You hear it and you think how you see yourself. You think, and your sort of emotional history comes up, and it's like, how is it possible that you would actually love me? Because I don't have anything to offer. So what's in it for you? How are you going to hurt me? That's the essence of how trauma shows up sometimes.
And you're showing up for me like you're going to be tied to this shit? It didn't make no sense. And love is irrational that way. You can't rationalize real love. It doesn't make any in a sense. And I had spent my whole life trying to rationalize it. Like, this dude hits me up. He's in my corner because, we with the same craft. You know what I mean? That's what he loves this thing that I got. That's why he loves me, because he loves that part of me, and then I would write your love off like, oh, okay, you love me because I do this.
So there's more to the interview, and I think there's a lot more good parts. I mean, that I really want to comment on, but I want to kind of keep this video a little bit shorter here. Just overall, though, I mean, and I apologize if I was interrupting too often. Leave a mark in the comments so I can try to ration my interruptions a little bit so you guys can enjoy the videos without stopping so much. But this is just a great interview, and if you come out of anything with this, I just hope that it can just jog your reflection of yourself a little bit. You can jog your thinking. It can infuse maybe some of the ways you think about yourself, or see your current relationship, or view your past. Right. So again, I appreciate you guys watching this and sort of tolerating me interrupting every 15 or 20 seconds. But please leave a comment below if you like anything, and I'm probably going to do more of these. So I appreciate your time. Thanks a lot.